So, welcome to today's webinar from University of Florida Extension on Sleep More and Stress Less. We do have a list up of some upcoming webinars. We'll have two in January on tax management. First one on the 17th, we'll have somebody from the Internal Revenue Service who will demonstrate some tools and give some really great information on doing your taxes. And then on February 26th, we'll also have a presentation that may be at a slightly higher level, talking about income tax rates, credits, deductions, and just some basic strategies to help you manage your tax liability. And then on February 9th, our nutrition and health webinar will be 10 ways exercise will improve your life. And then on February the 15th, we'll have one on managing student loan debt. You'll notice that there's some materials over in the materials section. And Wendy, I saw your note that my sound sounds weird, but I'm not sure what the problem is. So anyway, there's some materials over the materials feed in the materials box that you'll want to download. But first, who we are and what we do. We're all members of the Extension Service at the University of Florida. Each state and territory has an extension presence, and we're the outreach from the university down at the local level from the local land-grant university. Here at the University of Florida, we're in all 67 counties, and most have a family and consumer sciences agent, which is what Wendy Lynch and I are. Wendy and I are on today, as well as Wendy Dahl, who is at the University of Florida in the Food Science and Human Nutrition Department, and Jamila Lepore is also one of our team members. If you have any questions as we go through or comments that you'd like to make as we go through, you can put them in the chat box and hit send. You can send them to the entire audience, and then everyone can see, or you can send them to myself or to either Wendy Dahl individually or Wendy Lynch. They'll be minding the chat boxes. And say I mentioned materials feeds, the materials box. And later this afternoon, you'll be receiving a link to an evaluation. We greatly appreciate you filling out. Think of it as our payment for us providing this webinar, because we do need this information to help us with our annual reports and to improve the webinars. All right, so let's move on to sleep more and stress less, which sadly most of us probably seem to sleep less and stress more, which is probably why you're here. So when you look at this image, it talks about healthy living, and these really are some of the building blocks that we talk about a lot of our webinars about healthy living. The importance of eating well, eating a balanced diet, getting enough sleep, being well hydrated, getting plenty of water, reducing your weight if needed, regular exercise, and the last one up there is avoid stress. Well, avoiding stress may not exactly be the easiest thing to do, so we're actually going to more talk about managing stress. It would be, in a perfect world, we could avoid stress, but here in the real world, sadly, we just have to learn how to manage it. So when we think about sleep and stress, they affect each other, and this is why we can combine the two of them in this webinar, is because some of the things you do, there's similar things that you can do to hopefully help you reduce stress and to sleep more. But as you probably all know, when you're tired, you're more stressed. And if you're stressed, you can't sleep. You sit there thinking about all the different things that happen during the course of the day, and they just feed off each other, and it really can be a vicious cycle. So, but something else to think about is how both of these affect your short and your long-term health. Lots of, really a lot of similar things. But also similar things can help you improve both. And really lifestyle and behavior changes can improve both. And if all else fails, there's always medical options available. But certainly lifestyle changes are the best way to go. Anytime you take any kind of medication, there's always some chance of some kind of side effect. And lifestyle and behavior changes tend to be a whole lot cheaper than medical options. So let's look at some of the long-term effects of sleep loss. And there's a lot of them. Interesting enough, some of these conditions also cause a lack of sleep, but interesting that if long-term lack of sleep, you're more likely to develop diabetes, type 2 diabetes. You're at a higher risk of blood pressure, heart disease. Lack of sleep can lead to a lot of different things, including higher cholesterol, increased triglycerides, increased stress hormones, increased blood pressures, and also substances that indicate inflammation. Also, if you have sleep apnea, which we'll talk about later, increases your risk, especially if you don't use a CPAP machine. But even if you do, sleep apnea can increase your risk for heart disease. People who are tired, chronically tired, are more likely to develop mental illness. Interestingly, you're also more likely to develop postpartum depression, which isn't really surprising that you would be lacking of sleep because you have a young child who's keeping you awake, and you're more likely to be depressed since you're tired all the time. Being chronically tired can increase your chance of viral infections and other immune things, and also weight gain. How much do you eat when you're tired? Do those cookies suddenly call you? And when you're tired and also stressed, you do tend to eat more, but say lack of sleep is especially tied to weight gain among children. So all things to think of. And really a common myth is that people, learn to get by on a little less sleep. Lots of people say, oh, I get by fine on 5 or 6 hours. But really research suggests that adults need between 7 and 8 hours. And this is adults at any age. So evidence shows that children and adolescent teenagers' sleep is less than recommended as well. And these trends can be linked to both increased exposure to electronic media. People are attached to their electronic media, and this affects their sleep. So, alrighty. So let's talk about sleep and what sleep actually is. And so there's a term called sleep architecture, which is basically a fancy term for kind of like the building blocks of sleep. So there's 2 major stages of sleep. There's the quiet sleep. It's called the non-rapid eye movement sleep, and there's 3 stages of it. And there's REM sleep, which is also called dreaming sleep. And there's very specific things that tend to happen in all these different stages. All right, so let's look at the quiet non-REM sleep first. So non-REM is sometimes referred to as an idling brain in your movable body, in a movable body. So thinking and body functions slow down, but movement can still occur. So in stage 1, it's kind of like my father used to say, oh, I was just resting my eyes. Well, it's a very light sleep, and it's kind of a transition phase. People spend about 5 minutes or so in this stage. You sleep lightly. You can be easily awakened by noises and other disturbances. During this stage, your eyes move slowly, your muscles relax, your heart and breathing begin to slow, and then from here you move on into stage 2, which really is the first stage of true sleep. Your brain waves slow, but you have these occasional bursts of rapid waves, and this is at a stage where you spend about half of the night in this stage. And from there, you progress into stage 3 non-REM sleep, and your brain waves become even slower, and it just slows down. And this is really what we call the deep stage of sleep. It's very difficult to be awakened. In children, this is actually the stage where there's bedwetting occurs. But your blood pressure falls, your pulse slows down to between 20 to 30% below your waking rate. And this deep sleep is kind of the restorative stage of sleep. And this is really necessary to feel well rested and energetic during the day. And research suggests that in this stage, it's where your body may renew itself and also can even help repair your immune system. And then you enter into the dreaming stage. And remember that back to that architecture, we go between these different stages a number of different times through the night. So in REM sleep or dreaming sleep, it's really described as an active brain in a paralyzed body. It's known that REM sleep stimulates the brain regions you use to learn and make memories. And scientists believe this is the state that helps restore your mind and possibly help you clear out irrelevant material and help you kind of consolidate memories. This is a really important part. And during REM sleep, your eyes move in different directions even though your eyes are closed. Your breathing may also become more rapid, irregular, and shallow, and your heart rate and blood pressure increase. So during this type of sleep, your arm and leg muscles are paralyzed, temporarily paralyzed, so you don't act out your dreams, any dreams that you might be having. So all of these are really important. And when we look at the changes over time, and I don't know if any of you, like me, who, are somewhat aging and moving along this age spectrum, but you've noticed potentially that your sleep patterns have changed. And this is sadly pretty normal. And so you'll notice that when you're at age 20, you fall asleep quickly, you're more likely to stay asleep longer, and you spend more time in the N3 and the REM sleep, which are more the deeper sleeps as we go across. And, when you're age 80, you're only spending less than 25% of your time in deep sleep. It's also taking you longer to go to sleep. And then we still have some of the stuff in the middle with the joys of middle age, where your sleep is decreasing. And notice, though, that in the REM sleep, REM sleep still is about 20% for older adults, but these deep sleeps really account for less time, and falling asleep just takes longer as we get older. And it used to be that doctors would tell people, oh, no, it's fine. My mother, who's in her 80s, talks about, I just can't get more than 5 hours of sleep, and that's just fine. But really, research has begun to show that everybody needs, between 7.5 to 8 hours of sleep. Whether or not they get it, not so much, but we need to try to make some changes over time in order to sleep better. All right, so insomnia. Insomnia is really more of a term than an actual condition, which is basically, and insomnia is the most common sleep disturbance. And there's several different kinds of insomnia. There's transient, which means it's a few days, short term, which is a few weeks, and chronic if it persists. And so since there's no one particular cause for basically long-term not sleeping, it can have a lot of different reasons. It could be your medications. It could be a condition. Say people with heart disease and diabetes, their medications may keep them awake. Also, the condition itself may reduce your sleep. So there's lots of different things. And if you have long-term lack of sleep, it really is important to get it medically treated or try some behavioral changes first, which we'll talk about. But truly going for a long period of time not sleeping well is bad for your both mental and physical health. So, and as I mentioned before, lack of sleep also can be linked to emotional problems. But insomnia is treatable. There are medications, why you would over-the-counter and prescription, but also behavioral changes. And there's also behavioral therapy. There are sleep specialists that can help you with sleep problems. Okay, snoring. How many of you live with somebody who snores? And how does that affect your sleep as well? So snoring can be a sign of sleep apnea, which we'll talk about. But also, snoring can be caused by a variety of things. When you fall asleep, your muscles and your airway relax, and it causes your airway to narrow. And so the snoring occurs because this airway is narrowed, and the air flowing through it causes the throat tissues to vibrate, which is the noise. And so if you sleep with somebody who snores, which somebody in my household does, sometimes it's like a rattling noise when he snores. Sometimes it's worse than others. And men do snore more often than women. My husband says I snore, but I know that couldn't be possibly true. But it is when I tend to have a cold or allergies do make you tend to snore. But some other things that contribute to it are things like a deviated septum, being overweight, smoking, if you've had too much to drink or had sleep or have taken a sleep aid. They also relax your throat tissues and soften your throat tissues, which can make you snore. One of the other things that can make you snore is that little dangly thing in your throat, your uvula that hangs down. If it's overly long, it can make you snore. So things that can help. You can use maybe a humidifier. You can get dental appliances that kind of keep your mouth in a certain position. You can sleep more upright, sleep on your side, or use an extra pillow or one of those wedge pillows. Quit smoking. Okay? And if it persists, do talk to your healthcare provider. Because one of the things that it could be is sleep apnea, but there are some other sleep disruptors, and these are just a few of the different types of sleep disorders. But one of the handouts in your in the materials feed is a really great book, which there's going to be a link to it as well, for learning more about all kinds of different sleep disorders. But the more common ones are sleep apnea, restless leg syndrome, periodic limb movements disorder, and then there's things like narcolepsy, which is things when people fall asleep any time during the day, night terrors, and sleepwalking. But probably the really common one, it seems, especially because there's more overweight adults, is sleep apnea. And it's really it's a breathing disorder with a decrease or complete halt in airflow. And I'm not sure I know I have a friend whose husband has sleep apnea, and she told me that she slept much better after he ended up getting a CPAP machine, which is a machine which is like in this image where it basically forces air into you so that you're always getting air throughout the night. Because she would wake up in the middle of the night and realize her husband wasn't breathing, so she'd be awake waiting for him to start breathing again. So once he got the CPAP machine, both of them started to sleep better. But say the muscles, it's kind of like one of the same things as snoring, with the muscles relax and the soft tissue collapse, but they really block the airway. And so when you quit breathing, your brain kind of responds and says, "Wake up! You're not breathing." And this can occur hundreds of times during the night. So really, really important to make sure that you properly diagnose what your sleep problem may be, because it certainly goes back to one of my previous slides about the risk for chronic diseases that are caused by lack of sleep. And you're not getting air into your brain during part of the night. But treatments for sleep apnea include getting the machine, dental appliances, surgery, and also some behavior change and weight loss. And be sure if you have any questions or comments, be sure to put them in the text box. All right. So there's two movement disorders, and they're different. And these are both reasonably common. Restless leg syndrome affects women more than men, but it affects 10% of the people between 30 and 70%. And with restless leg syndrome, you kind of have this constant, and it occurs while you're awake, and it keeps you from sleeping. But you kind of have this pins and needles kind of sensation in your legs, primarily, but sometimes in your arm, which gives you kind of an irresistible need to move them. And so this is what restless leg syndrome is, one of the things that can cause the most severe sleep deprivation of almost any other sleep disorders. And cause is mostly unknown. It does tend to be hereditary, but it can be the results of conditions including iron deficiency, kidney failure, peripheral neuropathy, and pregnancy. And then we have periodic limb movement disorder. And so you jerk your legs hundreds of times during the night. And you may not realize it, but the person who's in bed with you sure is going to realize it. But it wakes you up. You don't realize why you woke up necessarily, but the arm jerking around causes sleep disruption. And kind of interestingly, most people with restless leg syndrome also have periodic limb movement disorder, but people with periodic limb movement disorder don't necessarily have restless leg syndrome. All right, so let's talk about improving our sleep. All right, so I said that most of us, the general recommendation of what we really need for sleep is between 7.5 to 8 hours of sleep a night. Most people think, oh, I get enough, but in reality, we really don't, and definitely youth do not as well. So let's talk about some of the things you can control. So one of the really most important things is to have a sleep schedule. And it's like going to bed at 9 o'clock one night, 1 in the morning, the next night. You need to develop a schedule both for that includes both weekdays and weekends, that basically you're going to bed about the same time and getting up about the same time. That'll really help you. And but don't force yourself to go to bed at a certain time when you're not tired, because you're going to lie there and go awake. Sometimes you're going to need to wait till you're sleepy in order to go to bed. And sometimes then extend that time and do some things to make yourself sleepy. But really important to stick to the schedule. But if you go to bed and you can't fall asleep within about 20 minutes, you need to get up and do something relaxing in order to make yourself sleepy. Things like flipping through a book in low light, things like that. Don't get up and turn on your computer. That's going to engage the brain. You want things that aren't going to engage your brain. So you don't get up and, I talk about reading, you don't read the crime novel that's going to really engage you. You want to read something kind of boring, and it will help you relax your brain. It could be music. It could be some kind of, relaxation exercise, which Wendy will talk more about. But when you think about sleeping, think about your room, where you're sleeping. What's your sleep environment? Is it noisy? Is it cluttered? Is your mattress lumpy? Things like that. So things to think about. If you have a room, that has more fabric in it, things like carpets and drapery, they're going to absorb sound more, so that will reduce your noise. Window panes, but the double pane window panes reduce outside noise. But if you can't reduce the noise, think about how you're going to block it out. And so some things to think about. I know somebody who operates a fan, which is white noise. They've got the sound of a fan running. And while we're doing this, I'd like to know if anybody's using any kind of apps to help them sleep. Because there's white noise apps, there's relaxing sound apps. I use one that has relaxing sounds when I can't sleep. I also do a meditation one. And Wendy's going to talk a little bit more because they go with the stress part. But does anybody use an app to help them sleep? I was looking at one that's a white noise one over the weekend that a friend of mine uses. And some of their white noise was a little odd. One was the sounds of a vacuum, and one was the sound of a dishwasher, which I seem to think is kind of odd white noise. But whatever works for you. Also, somebody said, I don't use the app, but maybe something you should try. Somebody else uses Rain on YouTube. Really, somebody has a sound machine. Thanks, I forgot to mention that you can actually just get a sound machine that you can put on nearby to give you that noise. Especially helpful for some of these things if you're traveling. So also think about your environment. Do you sleep with the TV on? You've got light going on. Really think of your bed as there should be only two things that go on in your bed, and that would be sleeping and sex. It should not be eating, playing games, doing stuff. Think about your whole environment. You want to encourage sleeping when you're in bed. So don't be taking your cell phone, your iPhone with you or whatever, and sitting there checking emails in the middle of the night and things like that. Dim light. I have a friend who covers every light in her room up. I mean, you can't see any light. It's completely dark. She can't sleep with any light. All right. Cooler rooms you tend to sleep better in. Do you have a good mattress, a comfortable mattress? Do you have decent pillows? So, and also something that people sometimes overlook is if they're properly managing pain. If you've got pain, it's gonna be trouble sleeping. So you need to think about the best ways to manage your pain. All right, so let's see. People using brown noise apps and white, which is similar to white. I also listened to a podcast that has some meditation that puts you to sleep. All right, so everybody's different, and so you need to develop your own relaxation rituals to get you to help put you to sleep. Some people, there's a thing called a worry journal, so that you write it down, all your worries down, and then that you're hopefully not thinking about them while you sleep. If you have a to-do list for the next day, things you need to do, write them down before you go to bed so that you're not thinking about them. Listen to relaxing music. A warm bath can be very helpful to some people. Say read using a soft light, and use prayer, meditation, and other relaxation techniques that can also be very helpful. But some of the things that really affect how we sleep is some other behaviors and what we eat and drink. And when I was younger, I could drink caffeine a lot later than I can now. Now, if I drink caffeine after about 3 o'clock, I'm reminded when I'm lying in bed that I shouldn't be drinking caffeine after 3 in the afternoon. But caffeine blocks some of our brain chemicals that help you fall asleep. And we probably all know people who can drink coffee at 11 and fall right to sleep. So it affects some people more than others. Alcohol does a few things. Actually, I guess it probably does a lot of things, but related to sleep, it really does reduce the quality of your sleep. And it actually reduces the amount of time that you spend in REM sleep. You spend more time in the less deep sleep parts of the sleep architecture. It also relaxes your throat muscles and then can worsen snoring and other breathing problems, which always makes your bedmate very happy. And something else that can really affect our sleep is what we eat and when we sleep. So if you go to sleep, then you've just eaten a huge meal, you're more likely to get heartburn because you're lying down. Interestingly enough, that when I was reading for this presentation, that if you're a side sleeper, if you sleep on your left side, you're less likely to have heartburn. But some common heartburn culprits are coffee, chocolate, alcohol, fatty foods, and peppermint. So probably having peppermint-flavored hot chocolate before you go to bed, made with cream, it would not be your best choice. Also, if you go to bed hungry, you're going to wake up in the middle of the night feeling hungry as well, wanting something to eat. So some other things are, oops, I think I skipped a slide. I think I went forward too fast. Nope, I guess not. All right, so other things. We'll start with over on the right side, tobacco. Nicotine speeds up your heart rate and raises your blood pressure and stimulates brain activity. So that can disrupt your sleep. Also, if you're addicted to tobacco, you may wake up with cravings throughout the night. But people who've quit smoking say it's improved their sleep habits. But do try to avoid it if you can, 1 to 2 hours before bedtime. Exercise is great for sleep if you do it at the right time, and it's especially beneficial for older adults. But try to avoid it between generally 2 hours before bedtime, because it's going to get your heart rate elevated, and so you're better off to do it sooner than later. But be sure that you do it. Okay, what about naps? My husband loves to nap on weekends. If I nap on weekends, I end up sleeping way too long, and then I can't sleep when the time comes. So they do take away from evening sleep. So, but if you're going to nap, preferably have a short one, closer to lunchtime. Wendy's husband's a napping machine. So, yeah, my husband on weekends likes to nap and then watches golf. It's exciting. So, but late afternoon naps do tend to disrupt nighttime sleeping. All right. So this is a great publication. Actually, this is the one that's in the materials feed. But think about tracking. If you're having trouble sleeping, track your behavior. And so in the Improving Sleep publication in your materials on page 42, there's a sample of a sleep diary. You can track them you can track your sleep with electronic trackers, and some of the stuff I've read on them says they may or not be accurate, because they're also keeping track of when you're not moving, and you may just be lying there not moving. So you may or may not be sleeping when it says you're sleeping. But also, really, a sleep diary can be helpful to find out, how long, how well you slept, what you ate. I drank a cup of coffee at 4 p.m. and I didn't sleep. I drank one at 2 p.m., but I did sleep, because you don't remember all this stuff. Think about your stress. Oh, when you took medications, especially if you add medications. I took XYZ pill at bedtime. I didn't sleep. It said that in the instructions that it might affect sleep. Maybe I'll try taking it a different time of day and see if it worked better. Also, tracking pre-sleep activities. This can really be helpful. I think I should get back to using my Fitbit and just not for exercise. So has anybody found that the Fitbit has really helped them? Do you think it's been accurate for helping you track your sleep? I'd like to know your thoughts. Okay. And sleep aids. Like anything else, medications are no magic cure. And really, if you can't sleep, it really is important to discuss this with your healthcare provider. I mean, no, not if it's like a week or so, but if you have long-term lack of sleep, you really should talk to your healthcare provider. Over-the-counter medications may or may work. Melatonin is something that's often mentioned, and it hasn't really, in research, shown. Some people say it works, but the research shows it hasn't been overly conclusive that it has. Also, with either over-the-counter or prescription ones, you can develop a tolerance to them, and they may interact with other medications. And also, some of these things, especially as you get older, can be really tougher on your body. I just want to mention a couple of resources that I use, for this presentation. One's free and one you have to pay for, but the American Heart, Lung, and Blood Institute has a whole bunch of great information, including your guide to healthy sleep. And then I also use some information from the Harvard Medical School special reports, but you do have to pay for those. And I always go for the free stuff first. So with that, I'm going to flip it back over to Wendy. She's going to help us work on our stress.
All right, guys. So are there any questions thus far regarding sleep? All right, we'll go ahead and move on into ready to stress less. So if you are asleep, now's the time to wake up because I'm going to need your input on some of these slides. So are we ready to stress less? How many of us experience stress? Probably
I know I'm
all
ready
of us.
to stress less.
Aren't we all? All right, next slide. So what exactly is stress? And stress is, according to Dr. Heidi Radunovich at the University of Florida, it's anything that causes you to have a stress response. And we know that Americans are stressed. According to Harvard Medical School and the annual stress survey that's commissioned by the American Psychological Association, 25% of Americans are experiencing high levels of stress. And this is on a scale from 0 to 10. And that high level of stress is rated at an 8 or higher. So you think, okay, well, 25% isn't that great. Well, guess what? There's another 50% that report moderate levels of stress, which is in the range between that 4 and 7. So we're all experiencing some type of stress. So how do you know when you're stressed? And this is where I want you guys to jump in the, type in the chat box for me. How do you know when you're stressed? What are some of your indicators? Anxiety, being wide awake, moody, oh, isn't that the truth? Getting upset quickly, not handling, whatever comes your way, whether it's a good or bad situation, having a short fuse, most definitely. Concentration. It is very difficult to concentrate on pretty much anything. Acid reflux kicks back in, blood pressure rises, unable to sleep. So these are all absolutely indicators. So some migraine. So you guys hit on a lot of these that we're getting ready to mention. So with stress, you're going to have either a physical, an emotional, a cognitive, or a behavioral type of stress response. So some of those physical ones that you mentioned, increasing your blood pressure, heart rate. You could either have diarrhea, constipation. Someone mentioned headache, sleep fatigue, dry mouth. Some of the emotional responses would be irritable or angry outbursts, which you guys also mentioned. A tendency to cry. I will tell you guys, there was a holiday commercial this year, and I don't know if any of you have ever experienced this, but I was a little bit sleep deprived which in turn caused me not to handle stress well. And when this really sweet commercial came on, I bawled like a little baby, which was not a normal response for me, but it was because I was not only under a little bit of stress during the holidays, but also just lack of sleep. So like Julie said earlier on, I mean, it's that vicious cycle. Someone also mentioned about cascading negative thinking, and we're going to hit on that just a little bit. Shaking hands and nervousness, absolutely. So cognitive, not being able to concentrate. Either you have a total lack of control, or maybe that there's not enough control, or too much control rather. Thinking about the past, that phrase that we might use, I should have done this, or I should have done that. Blurred vision even. Some of the behavioral might be increased smoking or drug or alcohol use, which is going to obviously impact your sleep, as Julie just mentioned. Aggressive behaviors, nervous laughter, repeating something over and over again, or even up to not really having much of an interest in anything at all. So these are a lot of negative, not so grand stress responses, but so what are some things that might cause you stress? And this is jump in that chat box again. Things that might cause you stress on a day-to-day basis. Toddler, kids, for sure. Work is a big one. Deadlines, finances, yes. You guys have hit on a lot of them. Family concerns, senior parents, children, so family concerns, financial concerns, a spouse, crowds, for sure. All of these things are not going away. Work is definitely a big one. Thank y'all for adding that in. And if you notice that some of those are positive maybe and some are negative, so not all stressors are going to be a negative thing, because we love our families. They may stress us out on occasion. Perfect storms of time commitment. Yeah, you're absolutely right. So again, but we love our families, but sometimes they can be stressful. However, they're still a positive stressor. So next slide, please. So like Julie mentioned, you can actually use this stress log similar to the sleep log she showed you. And what this, because it's different for every person, and stress is probably going to come and go, whether it's consistent at work or something new, or maybe you have something in your family that happens that's unforeseen. Those are all going to be considered stressors. So the stress log is going to really help you identify some of the things that you can take control over and the things that you're going to have to let go over time. So stress logs, one good thing to do is writing down the date and the time. Give that stress scale, that 0 to 10, and say, okay, this was not that stressful. I'm going to give it between that 0 and 3. Moderate stress level, that 4 to 7, and then if it's super high stress, that 8 to 10. What the event was, and then write down what your thoughts and feelings were, because that does make an impact when you go back to review. Because again, stress is different for every person. There are so many different types of stress logs available online that are free. There is one that Clemson Extension has a great publication about stress management and taking charge. They give a great example of a sample stress log and a plan of action activity in that as well. One thing that you want to do is, just like with food and activity logs, you want to make sure that you're going back and reviewing them. It's great to write it down, but reflect on those. Look back at your stressors. What were the things that are things that you can change? So let's say if I write down in my stress log every day and I go back to reflect on it, and I see something, think about why that stressor is important to you, and determine whether or not it's within your control. And for the things that are not within your control, those are the things that we have to learn to accept and let go, or we are going to continue with this chronic stress. So that stress response that we just talked about, the physical, the cognitive, behavioral, etc., But what happens is in our brains, as Harvard Medical School says, I mean, it triggers this cascade of hormones and physical changes, that fight or flight response that you might remember. So we're either, our bodies are preparing for fight or to run away. So this is what happens when stress comes on. So if you think about it, Dr. Radunovich also shares in her the Stress Buster series, or the Stress Less series, the importance. Think about fight or flight when someone encountered a bear. Okay, you're ready to fight or you're going to run. You're getting out of there. So our bodies don't know what type of stress we're having. It's going to respond in the same exact way, in that fight or flight, and that's where chronic or long-term stress is not a good thing. Next slide, please. So the stress response, okay, this is how our body is responding. Whether it's a positive or a negative stress, your body can't really determine which is which. So as you see, that adrenaline, cortisol are released. Someone had already mentioned about the blood pressure, the heart rate. Sugars and fats are going to enter your blood for really quick energy. They want you to be on point for if you do have to fight or if you've got to get out of there. Then, of course, your long-term functions. So let's say digestion. Perhaps you, basically, if you're in a fight, you don't want to have to say, can you excuse me one moment, I need to run to the ladies' room or the little boys' room. So all of those things are going to be put on hold to help you fight or get out of there. Also, your immune system does have an initial boost, but it's quickly suppressed in order for the body to focus more on the here and now. So that stress response, again, you're going to have a little bit of a sharper thinking in the beginning. Obviously, it can cause sweat to help cool the body. Your muscles may tense, and again, that's for that quick action that might be needed. Chemicals in the body are released to clot blood fast. And I just have to stop at this point. Isn't this amazing how your body responds to just stress in general? Our bodies are the most incredible machines ever. All right, so then blunting of physical pain. So if you are injured in this fight, that you can continue and push through until you can get to that safe place, or at least a safe place in your brain's mind. So that would be a stress-free or stress maintained, I guess that would be. Is that right, Julie? Then also your pupils even dilate during stress response. And I always think of a cat. When a cat gets excited, if you've ever looked into it, if you have a cat and you see their pupils dilate, again, that's going to be aiding in vision because they're ready to pounce, that fight or flight. So our bodies really are not prepared, or they weren't made to have this long-term constant stress. But unfortunately, I mean, you can see it in the chat box, a lot of us are saying work, and work doesn't just go away. So this long-term, constant, our body is responding to all these stressors in the same way that it would for, you know, if you're going into a fight or running away. That's really doing a lot of damage to our inside. So cardiovascular damage is one of the first problems that you're gonna see, and we know that heart disease is the #1 killer for both men and women. Definitely harder to de-stress, simply because when your body's in that constant and it's constantly releasing any type of hormones to help you de-stress, when it's in that constant state of release, it's going to be harder and harder to de-stress. Your brain just doesn't know when to shut off that response. Another potential problem is, you know, that muscle reduction. Obviously fatigue, Julie mentioned also, again goes back to that vicious cycle. But the muscle reduction was interesting simply because, you know, if you're in that constant process of being stressed out, it's going to take, the body's going to trigger the breakdown of protein to release that glucose into the blood. So it's taken from that muscle to give you that quick energy, and over time that chronic repetition is going to reduce muscle mass. And then also potential problems with reproduction. So with consequences of long-term stress, and again this is from Dr. Radunovich's Stress Buster series, the consequences, again, higher incidence of type 1, as Julie mentioned, and a lot of these kind of go hand in hand. Whether you eat too much if you're a stress eater, or maybe you stop eating when you're stressed out. GI issues, simply because if you think about it, that fight or flight, if your intestinal, your digestion is kind of stopping and putting on pause, if it's in that chronic stress, you're going to have some GI issues. As Julie mentioned earlier about being more vulnerable to diseases, and you guys hit it on the head whenever you said more problems with memory and thinking. And then who knew? Sleep problems as well. And that vicious cycle. So now that we're all stressed out because of all the stressors and stress responses, let's find some ways that we can de-stress. You know, what are some things that you guys do right now to help reduce your stress levels? So jump in that chat box.
Sorry. Let me figure out what I did.
Breathe deeply, riding your bike, exercise, fantastic. Meditate, volunteer. Oh, I like that one too. Massage monthly, quiet time out. Go home from work on time. Ah, I like that one too. Music and walking. Pray. Well, you guys have just completed my presentation. Play with the dogs, crochet, go to the gym. I love it. Power walking and prayer. That's a twofer. I love it. All right, Julie, let's jump on to the next one. So, you know, as we mentioned, guys, positive and negative stressors, but they're all going to be there. And you guys have been given a ton of already some great ideas for things that you can do to de-stress. But one thing to keep in mind, in one of the handouts that you have, the mindfulness handout, I love in this publication it says mindfulness, which you'll see quite a bit now, is a way of being rather than an activity. So whatever stress reduction technique that works best for you, you want to make sure that you're also being mindful during that time. So in this handout, it actually shows you the 3 key features of mindful awareness, which includes purpose, presence, so you're fully engaged, and acceptance. So whatever kind of thoughts pop into your head, you know, they're not good or bad. They're just, okay, they happened, let's move on. So being mindful is really important when you're going into actually doing a stress reduction technique. Someone mentioned about, you know, positive thoughts. So if you see this little diagram on the right-hand side, a positive attitude can go a long way. If you think about how any one of those actually, in the circles, the thoughts, feelings, or behaviors, if you see how if you changed one of those, it's going to impact the others. So for example, if I woke up and I fell out of the bed and I was just angry and that started my day because I was mad I fell out of the bed, how is that going to impact my behavior? I'm probably going to be a loose cannon that day. Hopefully I won't be upset with too many people, but I might say some things or respond in certain ways that I wouldn't normally do because I had negative thoughts. If I'm feeling sad one day, it's going to impact, you know, it can bring up some of those phrases that I said earlier about, I should have done this, and that's going to make me even sadder. And then what's my attitude or my behavior going to be like? I'm most likely not going to be smiling. So again, all 3 of those impact one another. So keeping a positive attitude is incredibly important when you're going into stress reduction techniques. So one of the first ones, breathing techniques, which a lot of you had mentioned in the chat box also. This is not by any means an exhaustive list of different techniques, but just wanted to give you a few. The links that you have in the presentation, I do believe that you should be able, if you have them on your computer, you should be able to click and link to. But I wanted to provide you with some resources because I knew we wouldn't have a lot of time to go through each of these. But abdominal breathing, so abdominal breathing, also called deep breathing, diaphragmatic breathing, belly breathing, paced respiration, so all of those, but pretty much the same. But breathing deeply, the air is coming in through your nose, fully fills your lungs, and the lower belly rises. So Harvard Medical School has a really great resource for that, as well as the University of Texas, which I have the link to here. Each of these there are a numerous amount of resources online. I saw earlier someone said Wendy was afraid if she practiced them you'd fall asleep. Well, you know, it's kind of funny is that, a little sidebar, as I was putting this my portion of the presentation together and going through all of these breathing techniques and listening to the different sound bites, I will say it took me a little bit longer because I was really enjoying being relaxed. So I encourage you to try those. So the next one is autogenic relaxation. So this is going to focus on various physical changes to help relax the body, specifically for like heaviness and warmth. So your right arm is getting, it's, you know, very, very heavy, and it goes through similar to progressive muscle relaxation, but it's going to focus more on that heaviness and warmth of different limbs of the body. The link that I have there is from the University of Sydney, and it's about a 13-minute relaxation. So the body scan, this is kind of the mind-body connection. It's going to combine both breathing and muscle relaxation. This link is from the University of Missouri Student Health Center, which was really interesting. I liked how they phrased it in the description of this particular link. Is they called the body scan its nourishing time. That alone was enticed me to want to do it. And this one's about 30 minutes, and you're thinking, wow, I don't have 30 minutes. Maybe it requires you to get up a little earlier, or maybe this could be part of your sleep ritual, getting ready to go to bed at night, but that nourishing time. Another one, UCLA Mindful Awareness Research Center has a variety of free guided meditations available as well. Muscle relaxation, so there's different forms. So down at the bottom, if you notice there's heat, I know a lot of folks will say, I just want a hot shower. That'll just give me some me time and also just take away some of the stressors, relax my muscles. Or maybe your heating pad, ooh, lavender, I like that one too, essential oils. Massage, I know someone mentioned about getting a monthly massage. What a wonderful treat. We work so hard, why not have that extra little treat which is going to help us to stress less? But the progressive muscle relaxation is fantastic. When I went through Dr. Radujinovich's series for the Stress Less, she has about a 15-minute progressive muscle relaxation, and I never realized that I was tensing while I was working at my computer. And what that progressive muscle relaxation does is it brings awareness to when your muscles are tense and when they're relaxed. So I highly encourage, give one of those a try. If you haven't done so already. I see we're getting close to time, so I will boogie. All right, next slide. So visualization or guided imagery. So this is when you're going to use your imagination to help kind of put your body in a more relaxed state. You're going to think of relaxing places. I like the picture of the beach because you can hear the ocean waves, my sand in the toes, things that are just going to, whatever you find relaxing. Maybe it's out in the forest, which is what this guided visualization or guided imagery is. The link that you see, it's performed by Andrea Bardak, and she was with the University of Southern California and the Center for Work and Family Life. It was fantastic. Highly recommend that. That's another great escape. You can do those very short time periods, so maybe you want to give visualization a try.
As I mentioned, visualization is really one of my favorite ones. When I can't sleep, which is usually stress-related, I have a podcast that I plug in, and I visualize a garden. Everybody's a little different. Sometimes I do water, but it's great.
And it's just easy to do. It just takes a few minutes of your time, and it really gives you time to focus. But remember, any of these stress reduction techniques that you're doing, you want to be mindful. Remember those 3 key guidelines, and if you don't, you've got the handout. Keep that in mind, and also up that positive mindset or that positive attitude. So some self-care, stress reduction techniques that you can do that Julie's already mentioned about sleep. Eating a healthy diet. Go ahead and jump to the next slide since we're running out of time. Thank you, Julie. Eating a healthy diet. If you haven't participated in a previous webinar before, We encourage you to check out the archives because we have some great sessions on nutrition and eating a healthy diet. But if you're just starting out, choosemyplate.gov is a great website to begin. You can see at the top there's My Plate, Audience, Healthy Eating, eating Style, as well as physical activity that you could choose to get more information on eating a healthy diet. Of course, exercise. And you know, January is the perfect time because it is the season of New Year's resolutions, right? So besides all of the incredible, amazing health benefits that you get, including decreasing chronic disease, you know, lowering your risk of coronary heart disease, lowering your risk of high blood pressure, risk of type 2 diabetes, I could go on, but it's also going to help improve your mood or reduce stress. One of the things, and I'm not sure who ever said this to me, but said that, you know, if you know you're going into a stressful situation, take a 5-10 minute walk before. Likely you're going to handle that situation so much better than you had in the past. Social support. Someone said this in the chat box earlier, is that having someone to bounce ideas off is a really good thing to do. And not only does it enhance your quality of life, but it does provide that protection or a buffer during a crisis. You have some support to help you through those times. Well, what happens if you don't have social support? You know, learning and engaging and trying to reach out and create and establish new relationships, which can be challenging, but it can be done because social support is so important for reducing stress levels. And Harvard Medical School even said that, you know, it may also increase your longevity. So I highly recommend social support to help you through those tough times. And you time, whatever that looks like for you, whether it's meditation, sitting at the beach, getting a massage, take that time for yourself, but use our calendars that we have, whether it be in your phone or paper calendar, schedule time for you. And if you're overwhelmed and you're saying, I have no time, schedule that time. Maybe it's, I know a lot of moms that I've spoken to said, well, I just take a 5-minute longer shower just sit in the bathroom by myself. So again, take whatever time that you need. And remember, we're trying to elicit that relaxation response, so true muscle relaxation, not necessarily just coming home, sitting on the couch after work, just kind of relaxing. We want to get that response from our body. So setting a time during the day for this to happen, that relaxation technique, make sure your space is quiet and you're comfortable. Sometimes you can be lying down or sitting in a comfortable chair, and try to aim for 10 to 20 minutes. That may not be realistic for you at first, but I do encourage you to do that to help with your overall stress level, simply because stress is not going away, but the way we manage it is extremely important.
All right. So thank you, Wendy. As Wendy said, stress is not going away from our lives. So truly we need to figure out how to manage it and to work on how it is that we're going to actually sleep, since we mentioned that the two really do feed off each other. So we want to thank you for participating in today's webinar. Next month we'll be talking about, I think it's Wendy and Jamila are going to be talking about physical activity, 10 ways it can improve your life. And later this afternoon, or it may be not till tomorrow, we will be sending out a really short evaluation. It is short, and I think it's usually 4 or 5 questions, and really it'll take you 2 minutes to fill it out. So we would gratefully appreciate you filling